Good evening, and I've got these beautiful sprinkle of flowers, and pretty much we can interpret that sprinkle of flowers however we want. You can have a go at doing some from your garden, you can do a bunch, or you can do this is a little bit, as I'd say, the kind of layout is a little bit more contemporary, but you can make things however how you like. Just think it would make really lovely, like card or something actually. So just having a little practice with it gives us lots of options. Now I'm going to demonstrate this one because it's just really, I just love the colours. It's so pale, but I'm going to do a little quick demo of this one as well. But before I do, just with how we use a darker background and then how we can take out the light colours without using masking fluid this time, because last time we used masking fluid. So you can use masking fluid if you want to, but I'm not going to, just because I'm going to do it differently to last time. But just so that we can think about, I know I'm always harping on about this, but it's so true that it's so nice to be able to interpret what we see in our own way. So these are just some examples of what other people have done with interpreting things the way they want to. And actually this one is like a mixed media one here. So you've got some actual paint. There's paint dropped in as well in the background, just in big kind of they've let it run into a very damp background. You get these little areas. And then this one is almost like it's been that artwork's been photographed and then somebody's actually dropped that in on a computer program. So it's really, really interesting how you can interpret these things. And then you've got all the little bits like this is really loose. There's not any drawing in there at all. It's somebody's just gone in with a brush or that a little different brush. And then this one, it's a little bit more tight and a little bit more precise. But I think what it does, it just reminds us, because watercolor is so many ways in which we can use it. We can use it really loosely with dropping these in. We can use it, much more tight with making flowers and things more accurate. So it really doesn't matter. The biggest thing is to experiment and just understand like the bits where it can be a bit tricky. So for example, what we have to think about are things like how much water do we apply, or how much pigment, how strong do we want the colours, and we'll go through that. When can I start? How dry does the background need to be when I start adding my other colours? Do I want it to run? Do I want some of the colours to be a bit washy and run into the background, or do I not? So things like where it goes wrong is it can go muddy. So if we've got, let's say, a blue sky and we're adding yellow, we can end up with a bit of a green sky because those colours can blend together and make it. And also we can get muddy back. We can end up with muddy flowers as well if we're going in with a, like a purple or pinky purpley colour and then a different colour background, again a blue ground. We can end up with it going a bit muddy. So it's thinking about things like if I'm using a similar palette of colours, then letting it run actually isn't going to make it muddy. It'll just make it a little bit more, it'll just let that colour spread out without causing too many problems. But also it's learning how much, even if you have got opposing colours, like opposites, like, red and green or blue and yellow or whatever it is, like how you can let it dry a little bit and still let it just kind of bleed out. So we can go also thinking about how loose do I want to go? Am I going to go really tight and really intricately and keep the colours very separate, or am I going to go quite loose? So there's all of those variables really, because watercolour, the more water we have in it, does behave in a very different way to other mediums. And sometimes we drop things in because we like the look, but it's never going, it'll just run the way it wants to. So some of it's that. The other variable we're bringing into the watercolors tonight is how warm the environment is. Now, if you're like, I'm in a really, really warm environment in my studio because it is hot in this shed in the summer, but in the winter it's cooler so the paper will stay much damper for longer. So I've got more time if I want to take some colours out. Whereas just brighten that up. Sorry, just bear with me a minute. There we go. So when it's really warm, what actually happens is it dries incredibly quickly. So if we want to take any light coloured areas out without using masking fluid, we've got to work really quite fast with that, which is fine. It's just acclimatizing to what's going on with the warmth and everything. So, and again, we'll just get used to that and used to our paper and used to the brushes and everything like that. But the beauty of it is you can just kind of go off track and drop colours in. So I've gone for this one, so it'll have very kind of a light background. So there's only a few flowers on there that might be a bit lighter in colour, but this is the one that kind of gets people confused, as people a bit, it's like, well, I've got this darker background and I really love the colour, but what am I going to do about these light bits? So one, we know we can use masking fluid. So this is a different way of doing it. So I'm just going to use this small piece to demonstrate to do that first, and I'll go on to the other ones. So you can draw out, any of the flowers if you want to. The biggest thing is when we've got a darker background, it's thinking, how do we keep these light colours here? And actually by putting a whole background in first, rather than trying to paint around it, which can look it's quite difficult and it looks quite false. So, I can just get a few flowers in. And you don't even have to do this. You can, as long as you've got an idea of where they're coming out. So I'm just picking a few flowers for now because my paper's only small, so that's why that's a red one. If it's a red one or something with and doesn't have any light edges, then you can just pretty much, you don't even have to draw it out. You can push it over the top of the blue. The biggest thing is with watercolour is we cannot cover over with a white watercolour over a darker colour. So that's why we traditionally work from whichever bit we're doing, we normally work from light to dark. So we'll do all the lightest areas on there, then the next lightest, then the next, and build it up that way until we've got the darks. But obviously we've got these light stalks and stems in there. If we do a daisy light one down here. Now you can just do shapes. You don't even need to kind of necessarily draw them out in detail. You can just do kind of a round circle or whatever, like, it's just to bear in mind to take over. So and again, it's placing. So it's thinking about where am I going to place it? And do I need everything in there? Am I happy to? What else have we got in here? We've got something up there. I'll stop there because it's really, really tiny. So I know I've done mine quite lightly, and you should really do it lightly if you can. I've only put that in because I'm going to lift out this blue colour before I go on to demonstrating this one. So my colours now. Well, I need to think about, this is a very kind of bluey colour, but again, go with a background you like. So even if you start mixing something, I'm going in with you can add, different colours to your blues to kind of get them a bit more turquoisey or whatever if you want to. So I'm first of all just lifting it out of the palette, the little well, the pan, that's the word. So these are pan, and obviously you can get them in tubes. If you're using tubes, you need the tiniest amount and you're thinning it right down. The biggest thing people do with the watercolors that are in tubes, and I do it myself as well, because we forget, and we're used to using acrylics like that tube, is that we squirt it on and we use it like an acrylic. I mean, you can do that, but if you want to kind of explore like a whole range of the watercolor, with how fluid you can get it, then you still do need to thin it out. So sometimes it's difficult. The more water that I add to that, the lighter that background is going to be. So if I want more pigment on it, that's what it looks. So I just put a bit there. So it's very thin. If I want more intensity, I've got to put more in it, but I still need plenty in there. Yeah, that's fine actually. Still need plenty in there to get so you need to mix up lots for your background, whichever color you're going in. And I'm ready, what I've got ready, I mean, you can take this out with a cotton bud, you can take the color. So what I'm doing is taking the light areas out so that when I come to doing it, I can still got a white head, like a little white flower head there if I want to, or a very light colored stem and work into that stem. So I'll just take this off the mouth. So you can see what I'm doing there. I've got my piece of kitchen roll at the ready, and I'm going to take out all of these little lighter areas that I've done in here. And it might be all of the flowers. Even if some of them have got, like that one, I probably wouldn't bother. I'd just paint that over the top because it's very dark. But like some of these have got light edges, haven't they? So if it was a big area, then I'd go in with your big brush. You can try with the mop brush as well. You'll need lots and lots of pigment mixed up and lots of water mixed up on your palette if you're doing that, because it kind of sucks it in. So those brushes are great for watercolor, and we use them really differently to how we've used them for acrylic. So we can like dip them into lots of watery fluid. Or you can just go in with a nice big round brush, load it up, and then kind of drag it over on its side to cover it like that. Or you can go in with a nice flat brush. So there's lots of opportunities to use lots. I'm just adding a bit more water because I'm just make sure this is all going to cover. So what I'm thinking about whilst I'm doing this is how I'm going to have to work really quickly. So as you can see, that the pigment's disappeared from that because I've thinned it down and it's not quite dark enough. I would like a bit more pigment in there. So I'm just adding more in my palette here. So that's the thing that can happen. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to work top down and bring it down, and I'm covering all of those flowers. You can go even darker with your colour, but I'm loading up that liquid, so there's lots on there. And the reason for that is I want to keep it moving. I don't want it to dry out in between. And I'm kind of going from top down so that I get a nice even one. And you can keep moving it backwards and forwards. But we need quite a lot. So I'm going to pop that down, and fairly quickly, you can use either a dry brush, look, for your stems. I'm taking out that with a dry brush, or you can use an earbud or something. And then I'm just going to pop just very quickly still. I'm taking out so it soaks up the shape of these flower heads, so that when I come to do it, I know, because I can't put white paint over the top. Well, I could, but I'd have to use acrylic paint or gouache over the top. So all is not lost. This is a kind of following a more traditional way of people using watercolor, where this is reserving the areas of white, it's called. So yeah, so that's all we're doing on this one down there. Now, if you've missed one and it's already dried, because it will be drying fast, I'm just going to go in with some water and wet that off again because it's very recently done. And then I can then dab that bit out there. So all is not lost, but it's just thinking fast and putting plenty of water in this mix so that you can take those colours out there. It's fun, really. Really, really fun to do. And then when I'm ready to work into that, then I can start to think about, the different colours. But I'm going to let that dry because there's nothing on here that I would actually personally let run except another similar colour. So what I can do while that's damp though, and it's drying super fast, is at the bottom here, it's quite dark. I might go in with another like darker blue just because it might be interesting, and I want to experiment here. There, that one's darker. So I might want to just try dropping some of these darker colours in between. And you can do this when it's a bit more dry as well. Just because it's just sometimes fun to explore what will happen. So, and it looks a bit stark at the moment, but I'm just going to drop it in like this. Yes, I've got this really, really kind of damp, and because I just fancy a bit of variation, I'm just dropping it in. Now, you don't have to do it with a round brush even, you can do it with another brush, and you can also, you can soften it down with a softer one even. So this is where it's really experimental, because we never know when we're dropping paint on which way it might go. The other thing you can do as well before you drop it on is re-wet some of the areas just nice and gently and see what happens. But I'm just trying to kind of really illustrate how you can use different colours within that tonal range to get some fun. So I might even, I might even drop in some other little colours down the bottom of here, just to have a little play really in this background, just to vary it a little bit. Or you can just stick with one, it's entirely up to you. So if I drop some water, and we can again experiment, if I drop some water somewhere, anywhere around here, I can then even pull some of this colour and let that bleed into that background up here. So I'm just wetting around here and then just pulling it so it kind of like starts splaying out a bit. So there's lots we can do. I'm still avoiding those light areas. So again, I've got some, just pull that in. But we can end up with some really lovely effects, really interesting effects just doing it that way. You could even go in with something else on the blue tone range, like I've got a bit of purple here. So I could just have a little experiment and see what happens if I drop some purple in now, for example. So this is a bit more contemporary, I'd say, but nonetheless, it's still really good fun and another way of working really. How you get all these super like interesting backgrounds with the watercolor. I've just dropped a bit of purple in just to see. So yeah, so really is a great time to experiment on something like this where you've got all of this, you've got the flowers going between. So I'm going to move that one across. That was just to demonstrate really when we've got a darker background, how to remove those white ones. And then all we will do is if I'm using something, I'm going to go in with a colour that's lighter or I want to kind of get some stalks and things in or some lighter areas. I would then work when it's dried off a bit because I don't want necessarily some of my reds and things to bleed in, but you might. So again, I'll just do a little bit. So if I demonstrate, what will happen, and we can all explore this ourselves anyway, what's going to happen if I kind of if I give something that kind of a colour, I may want to just work the petals in and make it loose. I've got some much lighter areas, and I will make sure they're in. Okay, over here, so there's a brighter pinky one over here. And you can, if you wanted to mix up pastels, you can use your white to make a pastel colour that's not quite as strong. That's fine, or a bright pink or whatever. And so I'm just kind of working around this flower and dropping it. So I have gone a bit looser perhaps than I had intended, but this is the thing with watercolour. Sometimes you do it, you think, oh, actually, I'll just try that because it looks quite interesting. And we're putting all these shapes together, and then there's some darker ones I might put in afterwards. And again, how long do I need to wait? Well, you just got to kind of just have a try, and when it doesn't quite work out, that's often the place when we go, oh, I needed to leave it just that bit longer, but it doesn't matter because we're experimenting. So I've got a dark one, I'm just kind of dropping that in. And again, that's because this is all a very similar tone with the pinky purples. So I'm not worrying about that. If I had to drop in yellow, I just wouldn't do it yet because it would just completely go muddy colour. So yeah, so we're just working through it like that really. So that's the one where you've got a darker background and we can just tackle each area itself and work on it. And again, the stems, if it's greeny, if it's a lighter colour, I'm probably going to let it just dry a little bit so that doesn't all splay out. But just see how you feel. You might start it and think, oh, I'm really liking this looseness. You may even, as you've got your flowers there, you might even start to drop in something else in, I'm just having a play there. Yeah, see what happens. See if you like the effect. And you can always do a couple. You don't have to stick with just the one. You can have a go at doing a couple of different things. But I'm going to come back to this one now because this is a little bit different, just because it's much lighter. And again, just have a think. Do you want to go really loose with this, like the bits at the back, like this, without any drawing on? That's much more illustrative feel, and again, that has a lovely place in itself. Doing a piece like that's almost like you could see that, couldn't you, with these pieces, like almost making a card with all these different kind of ones. Or are you going to draw these in first and make it a little bit more intricate? So I'm going to leave that entirely to you. And I think I don't normally I don't normally demonstrate just going for it. So I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm not going to put any drawings into place. I'm just going to start to add some lines, but I'm going to get my background in place first. So this really will be an experiment because I don't normally demonstrate like this at all. So that'll be fun, a fun thing to do as well. So let's have a go. I'm asking everyone to get out of the comfort zone, and I should too, shouldn't I? So I will. So let's have a little look. I'm going to look for a nice tone for this. I'm just going to get rid of my blues so that we're not taking up my palette. Take them off. And really what I'm looking for is a nice background colour. There's one that I fancy. I think it's a little bit more orangey actually on the actual one. So let's see what we've got. And again, this is the joy, is to be able to, and you can, obviously I've got a little bit of paper. It's very useful to test your colours as well. Sometimes you can't always tell the intensity of them. So I've got a little paper there to try that one out on there. So I think we'll go with a peachy colour. So for this background, but very, very light. I'm going to go for really light on that. Opposite of what we've just done, really. So when we're thinking about peachy colours, we can think about some warmish yellows, maybe a bit of a warmish red like Acadian red, kind of more on the orange scale. Now, so if I test that, that's quite bright at the moment, so I can do two different things. I can water it right down so it's really light. Oops, Daisy. Experiment a bit with that. Yeah, so that's lighting up quite nicely. And we need really plenty. This is what we were saying before, so it doesn't really matter which one we're doing. Need loads. I'm going in with similar ones. But then the other thing you can do, of course, is you can add a little bit of white. If you're wanting to make it pastely, which is what I want a really pastely effect. So I've gone in there and I've added white, so it'll be more, yeah, so it's less intense because I've watered it down already. And it's also a bit pastely, so I would be inclined to go even more watery on that one. And we don't, this is why it's great to kind of test these out. Right, I'm more happy with that. I think, yeah. I'm still going to add more. I may add a tiny touch, a bit of a pinky one in there as well. A bit of a purpley one in there. I don't know why I'm doing that, but I just feel like that's what I need to do. So again, our gut instinct is great in in these things as well. Okay, there we are. So I think I'm nearly at that point. I'm still adding because I'm happy for this to be really thin. Now I've got mine taped down. Sometimes it stops the edges curling up with a thicker, whether it's thick or thin. So again, this other one's taped down, so I'm going to have to work pretty much where I am. And I'm still thinning this down. I'm happy for it to be really, really kind of just blend in a bit with the background. Added the tiniest bit of a pinky colour to it, pinky purple. Right. And that's the process really when we're using watercolour. We're forever, thinking, oh, I like that, or I'll change it, or I'll do that. So I'm going to go in and hope, actually, I don't actually think there's still enough there. I don't think that's going to do it. I think it's only going to do the very top. It might be okay. And this is why I was saying, make sure you've got plenty. I'm just going to go backwards and forwards on that. Make sure you've got plenty mixed up so that you can cover your whole sheet, especially if it's drying super quick like it is for me. So it's very subtle, this one, what I've got on here at the moment. Very different to the other one. And like, you know, they're all pretty, it's just down to what you fancy doing on the day. You know, you might do one of these today and think, oh, I'm really enjoying those. Or you might, but you might not. You might think, oh, I'll do the bright one, and that's what I feel like today. But we've got the choice to do any. I'm just got just about enough. There we go. So I'm really kind of working that backwards and forwards in there. So I know it's probably find it difficult to pick that light colour up on the screen, but that doesn't matter. So you know, and you can start in the middle and you can work your way out, or you can, you know, put a couple of things in that overlap or whatever. And I'm just looking, you know, I think most things on here might be just a couple that are quite light. So I think I might place some of those in. So like this one here, whilst it is still damp, I'm looking at that colour. It's a bit of a blue. I'm going to go for a blue green, but again, you can go with any colours or any colour palette you want because it's yours. That's the beauty. So I'm mixing, you know, you can get different greens with the by adding blues or by adding a bit of yellow to it. That then. I don't like, but I do like it. So all I'm going to do for the moment is I'm just going to go in with this lighter colour, and I can always darken it if I want to, or put blue, add a bit more blue as I'm going. And again, sometimes it's if you're going for kind of a more illustrative look, then you know, you're not always exactly sure what it is that you're going to do. So I'm just going to start to pop this in and go for this one here that's just got this very light coloured. And I'm just really kind of quite loosely adding these, just with nothing at all. And I'm really not worried, if I'm honest, about the outcome today. I'm just the exploration is a really good one. So because that's dried on my sheet, I'm just going to go in, just wet it slightly and try and get this bit of flower that's overlapping here. Just pull that shape out of the background, although you might not be able to see too much. Just kind of lift it out, but just slightly lighter. Just gives me a couple of options. There we go. So that, you know, that is always an option. I think you can see it now just. Is to keep doing it whilst it's damp now, because we've only just, with another kind of flower head down there, and I'll do that same to that. I'm trying not to scrub it too much, so it's kind of more about dampening and dabbing. Otherwise, what we can do is take the, you know, take the grain off the paper, and it just kind of peels off, and it doesn't work very well. It won't work then. And then there's just another one over here. I'm just going to take this, and the rest of them I'm going to kind of pretty much put the colours in because there's no other real white ones on there. Okay. Yes, then we can just start to have a little experiment with the, you know, the different areas of it and start to drop some of the flower shapes in. So, you know, I could, again, subtly, just because I'm keeping my colour palette quite light here, I'm just subtly going to just make it slightly different in places. And I'm not going to be frightened of letting this run. I'm just going to kind of quite enjoy letting it run tonight, making it much more loose than I would normally keep it, just for a change. And then again, you know, we can still use that bit where we drop a little bit of, water behind it and let it kind of bleed out if we want to. See what happens there. And as we build up, we'll start to see, we'll start to get a little picture of these ones. So I think I tend to stick to working on each flower until I'm happy with where it's got to. And also it means what if I'm using this whilst it's wet, what I can do is go in with a slightly darker colour because I'm working from the lightest colour to the darkest. There might be some in there that are just a little bit more, just a little bit darker. And I'm just going to drop in. We don't always know whether how much it's going to run, like I said, so it's just an experiment really of working in your darker areas. If it totally goes on the other colours, it's not quite dry yet because you can't get that difference in colour. But it doesn't matter. And then I'm working in just a darker one, just on one of the sides. And then it's a process of just building up some of these other areas. It's really good fun, but I'm going to take a pause there, just see how we're getting on. Got lots to think about for the moment. Okay, so we can just keep going with these beautiful rings of flowers. Yeah, lots of different colours of greens, and sometimes in these stems you get little bits of um, purples and reds and all sorts, don't you? It's just really interesting. And a bit more brown, that bottom one. Yeah, some just lovely, aren't they? So nice. I think it's great because it helps us look at the tones in here too. So some of the tones are cooler and some of them are warmer. So it just gives them a reason to experiment here. Like this one on there, these blossom branches, they're a little bit cooler actually, but you could get away with, like, I've got a bit of purple and a bit of brown in there together for those stems. And then again, you can thin them out. Let's just give that to me. You can thin them out. Or you can even add, you can make them a bit pastel even if they're dark, just with a touch of white again. So it's just, making it work for you really. Um, I've when you've got some flowers in there as well, sometimes just leave a little bit of a gap between them where the flower heads are going to go. Yeah, so even if we've got lots of like little branches like this one's got loads, we can just vary the tone of the ones that we've actually used by adding a few, lighter or darker ones in there. It kind of gives us some depth, even if we want to keep it nice and simple. It's very interesting to see how all the strings of stems work on each of the different plants. That's one of the lovely things actually, because they do behave very differently. So for things like buds, um, new pinks and things like that, you can use different pinks in there. I've gone in with an Alizarian crimson this time as opposed to a different red, because that gives us this kind of cool pink if we mix that with white, or if we water it right down. Because Alizarian crimson is a more on the blue tone, got less red in it than some of the other reds, and more blue. But again, it's like, just dropping in where we think they go either side of the branches and things like that. But just keep enjoying getting lost in there. It's lovely. Going up and down these strings in itself makes you feel like it's quite meditative, isn't it? Lovely. To create some difference in there, I would go in just with the odd deeper colour. Just drop in a slightly different colour in there. You do get these pops of like little darker ones, but I'm going to drop mine in whilst it's wet, and it might spread a little bit within the. I'm not going to put them everywhere. I'm just going to put them in occasional places. And then again, that gives us just a little tiny bit of depth and we can still keep it simple just by putting those little shadows in last of all. And you can always add some other tones as well if you want to along there. Doesn't hurt popping up an extra different tone in there. See what happens, just explore it. Especially if it's another warm one, it just adds an extra kind of layer of depth to it. Oh, cool. And then, you can either keep working through, or you can go back and deepen some of the, any of the other darker ones there that you've got. Add the darks on. Just entirely up to you how you work through it all. Just still experimenting with different greens on the palette. Or mixing different greens up with different things. It feels a bit purpley over here, so I want to add a bit of this purple and see what happens. You know, sometimes that colour isn't going to be muddy, it's just actually gets to be the tone that you're looking for when we're mixing greens and things like that anyway. So again, I'm going to keep testing a little bit. There we go. So I'm not always sure what the depth is going to be or how dark that colour is going to be. But you can keep moving it, you know, that's the beauty of it, to keep moving that colour down. Lovely. Right now. And just working some of the tones under it. I'm quite happy for this to bleed into the colours a little bit, but again, that's where we're, you know, experimenting with those kinds of things that we wouldn't normally do. And we can still take out, if you've got like an area you think, oh, I've put too much dark in there, just take it out with a clean brush and dry the brush off if you want and take it out, or a little bit of something else. It just gives like that little highlight still that we're looking for. And this is the thing, you know, it can be a total botanical representation of exactly what you see, or you can try and make it fit the style. So for example, I'm just going for this kind of illustrative feel, and I'm going for kind of more of a colour palette that fits together as opposed to, you know, a really accurate study. Nice, isn't it? Just making these lovely little flicks and shapes with the stems. And the movement without it having to, you know, be identical. So when we're doing freehand, we're kind of just placing these in a looser manner. I'm going to stop there and get this one in before we've got like a flower head over the top in the middle. I'm just going to put that in now. pinks. And again, with the pinks, just experiment, is it a cooler tone? Is it a warm tone? Does it need more kind of reddy yellows in it? Does it need more bluey pink in it? And a lot of the time, you're not, if you're not sure, if it's not all laid out in your palette like that, you've got to just kind of work through them and see. Water actually, it's kind of blue. Sometimes we're just literally just doing a series of what feels like petals. Just a few little shapes and things. I'm just dropping them in. Here, mine's very wet. My petals over here are still very wet, but I'm not too worried. Well, I think, oh, well, similar tones, so I'll have a little bit of an experiment about where they go to. Not worry about that too much. If it goes too far, I'll just kind of dab it a bit. Like this one is now spreading a long way up. Just dab it off a little bit with a kitchen towel. But it's this suggestion of these, what they are for me. Or you can come back to them like this. I think if I put this in there, I'm not going to get that right centre, so I'm going to just wait until it's dried a little bit because it's very, very wet. And again, we're just exploring those things as we go through. How much, when, how much do I need some time to let it dry? observing all the little intricacies, aren't you, really, as we go? And each of these different stems and how they work and building up any shadows that we can see. The beauty of it is, you know, we've got the, it's having the time to be able to explore in this way. You know, and using, you know, light brush strokes as opposed to dark ones, those kinds of things. As a heavy one, sorry. But one that's going a little bit behind another, you can always add a tiny bit of touch of blue to the stem to make it feel like it's a bit further back than the other. Just a little trick. You know, and as things are drying, we can, you know, go back and add a few more little bits. Whether that's the centre, you can also experiment with some of these dark colours as well, you know, and think, you know, what is it? Is it black, or is it a dark, really dark version of what we've used already? Yeah, and some of them are quite smudgy in the background, aren't they? This thing does feel like it's going back a bit, as I said, you can always try a little trick with a bit of blue. If you want something to feel like it's popping forward, you can have it on as light, or um, even add a touch of something a bit bright, bit warmer in it, like just a touch of yellow or something like that. Really small amount. Might feel then like it's coming forward a tad. We're just continuing, you know, continuing our way through really with all these beautiful stems. You know, are the stems a little bit on the red side, or are they a little bit pink? Some of them are at the top. I mean, they're all such shapes and sizes. We're just having all these different tones in, which then does start to make a nice difference as well to what we've got on now. We can see why they're strings, can't we? Okay, just like a little pause there, see how everybody's getting on. Okay, so we just continued to work our way through, putting all these lovely, beautiful strands of shapes and things that we can see. We're going with this, looks almost a little bit poppy light, does that? But this small one, we're going quite light with it. Probably we'll just mix up some pinky oranges. There we go. And again, it's like getting the lighter ones in. Sometimes leaving those gaps is the bit we can find a bit, we forget. So I can just go in and leave the light bits to start with in the middle. That can be quite helpful. So yeah, so we don't, we don't need to always use masking fluid, and it's something that was very popular. I suppose when you're doing big landscapes and you want to do these big washes, a lot of people find that easier. But it's just developing what works for you. I personally, this is just, it's not trying to influence anyone with it. I just prefer not to use the masking fluid just because I find it stops my flow of actual painting. I feel like it's the stop start bit trying to do this and then take it off, and so that's why I prefer to just lift it out. But I do understand that you can't always do that with it. And I'll just darken some of these frills later once it's dried a little bit there. These are nice where you just get one flat leaf on a poppy. They work really well, don't they? I'm not sure what that is. It's it's so light, I can't even see that one. You can almost just see the shadow of it. There's a few kind of grey ones in there. So I'll just put the shadow in with a little bit of grey. that little shadow behind it as well. Yeah, I like, oh, I put it in the wrong place. Oh no, I haven't, it's there. I think I put that one in. There's another one that comes up here. Tulips are nice, aren't they? You know, because you've got that very light bit and then the pops of brights. But again, that can, you know, you can almost sometimes let that bleed into the colours below it as well. But yeah, we're just dropping in little bits in there. And again, you have to decide, is it too, that's what we're all deciding, isn't it? Is it too early to drop it in? Is it going to spread too far? So I think mine is very wet there, so we'll leave it just a tad until it's ready. I'm going to take out this line with my bit of, with a dry brush there, or a bit of tissue. Things like, you know, are there any dark areas underneath the head of the flower? Sometimes you get a little dark bit at the top of the stem. Those are kind of extra little bits you can pop in while you're waiting for something else to dry. Works quite nicely. Or light ones if there's a light ones in there. Makes it a little bit more interesting. Those are often the bits that we don't put in because we're waiting for, you know, we don't want it to kind of spread into the top of the flower or whatever. Poppins coming in for sure here too. Yeah, we can just kind of leave lines between when you're trying to get like the frilliness of a flower and just darken any area, any little edges or whatever that where the folds are or the light bits are. And I'm just looking for where the lights come across as well. That's sometimes difficult to see at first glance. Sometimes we need to take that out after we've done it. So that's, yeah, it's okay. Or we might have put those in if we use the fluid, you know. Just popping in a bit of a tone, a slightly darker one somewhere where they are does help with creating a small amount of depth. It doesn't have to be really dark either. Just the odd touch here and there definitely helps. I'm now revisiting, going back to anywhere where I couldn't put a darker one in before to get the shape of those petals over the top. Popping those in. Yeah, and just go back and have a little look over and see as you're working through where else needs a bit extra bit of something or not. You know, you can leave it in really simplistic and illustrative. You don't even have to put the depth in if you don't want to. See what you like, you know, explore it. It's about exploring the style, isn't it? Like we were saying, of, you know, what is it that I really like? And you might do one thing like this, and then another thing that's much more detailed. That's the beauty of being the artist that you're creating in each instance in a way that you want. Doesn't, you know, you don't have to have one continuous style with things. You do one thing one way and another thing another way, and that's absolutely fine. I think I'm going to take a final pause there, but I hope you've enjoyed that and it's given you some helpful, useful tips, really to encourage you to just kind of go your way with it and explore and see how it works and how it doesn't work, and and then we can build on that as we go through. So I'll leave that there and for this evening.